Hey, welcome back.
Welcome back. We haven't been anywhere.
I know. It's been like, how many months has it been? The podcast. No podcast today, brother.
Well,
podcast today, no podcast in the past there, brother.
Well, I'll give you some perspective. We recorded our last discussion before I started reading 1984. So 1984, I don't remember when I started reading and finished reading the first time, but my note taking, I started on April 23rd. It's currently July 14th or 15th.
April, June, July.
Yeah,
That's a while.
It took me about 2.5 months to do the reading and compiling of the notes. So yeah, we haven't recorded one of these in at least 3 months.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Probably
Your microphone is low.
It is low.
Why is it low?
Well, because I'm talking down to it.
Okay, well, as long as you're talking down to people.
Yeah, exactly. Talking down to everybody, even though you're a little taller than me, so it's kind of
I don't think
easier.
Am I?
Maybe.
No, I think
either
this
way,
chair
that's
is
not,
tall.
That is not real. Oh, that's why you're all jacked up.
It's a commentary on 1984.
Yeah.
The tall chairs versus the small chairs.
Well, speaking of which, what do you know about 1984?
Nothing. George Orwell.
Yeah.
I've heard many people talk about it. I know it has something to do with either censorship or like big government.
Well, it's definitely big government.
Big Brother.
Well, Big Brother. So if you don't know 1984, and I assume all people have some familiarity, whether they know it or not, but 1984 is written by George Orwell, and it is actually where the term Big Brother comes from.
Really?
Yeah, it's how they coined the term.
Really?
Yeah.
When was this written?
That is a very good question. I think 45.
Holy shit.
I think something like that.
So this is what he imagined 1984 was like.
Exactly. So there's a lot of devices he'll describe that sound very much like things we have, but they're described like a lot more generically, right? Because he didn't know, we're going to have like cell phones and surveillance, but he had some ideas. So I'll go right to it. So Big Brother is the name that the government uses as like their catch-all term. So the government is actually made up of like a group of individuals that are led by this one character, Big Brother.
Really?
Yeah.
Are they referred to as the corporate government or
the party?
The party?
Yeah. There's the inner party, and that's the most powerful individuals. Then there's the outer party, which are like the people who support the cogs in the machine.
Always be concerned about a governing group that goes by the name the something.
Yeah, the company.
The company,
group,
yeah. The
cabal.
The Falcons.
The Falcons. That would be a weird one.
The hockey team or something.
So the main character of 1984, his name is Winston Smith.
Winston Smith.
He lives in London, so maybe that's why he's called Winston. I don't know if that's supposed to be a reference.
Interesting.
But either way, he lives at this place called Victory Mansions. Well, everything is actually named after Victory in this place. They have Victory Mansions. Victory Gin is the gin that they drink. You can buy it for 10 cents a nip. That's what they call it.
Okay.
It's like you get a little tiny glass. You buy it for 10 cents. And basically, they serve them gin, Victory coffee, and bread.
Victory coffee.
Yeah, which isn't real coffee. It's like a synthetic coffee.
Freedom fries.
Everything, though, it would be Victory fries, I bet. But they don't have fries. They feed them we'll get there. But so he's looking out the windows of Victory Mansions because he actually lives up on like a higher floor, and he can see a poster. So the posters that they have all over this place are a huge picture of a mustached man.
A mustache? Is it a handlebar?
I don't know if I have a picture. I don't have a picture here, but some of the book covers are actually the picture of Big Brother.
Yeah.
That's what they are. These huge meter plus wide posters of Big Brother's face. And then under it says, Big Brother is watching you.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's very explicit. It's not like a subtle...
Oh, it's very overt.
Yeah,
very much saying like...
Big Brother is literally watching you.
We're watching you right now.
So in his room, he has this device called a telescreen. And it's essentially a TV, but you can't turn it off. You're never allowed to turn it off. You can only turn it down. Not even like mute. You can just turn it down or up, but otherwise it's always on.
Whoa.
So it will play music, it will play like announcements from the government, but also it can watch and hear you all the time.
Oh.
24/7. And what's more than that is it's not like, oh, they could be watching at any time. Like there's moments where they speak to him through the telescreen.
Oh, wow.
Like they're doing exercise and it's like, Smith, Winston, like, you know, do more work, like be more into it. So they're actually watching you all the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
And there's...
Did they explain when this started?
They don't explain exactly. There's a lot of vagaries, but the problem is in this world, he doesn't even know what the date is. For sure. Like he knows what the government tells him the date is.
Oh.
But it's been so long, he doesn't even really know like that it is 1984. That's just sort of like that's his best guess because that's what the government says.
Yeah.
So he knows sometime in the 60s it began, like the takeover began.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm imagining telescreens came in somewhere in the 70s.
That's a fucked up idea.
Yeah. So he lives in this weirdly shaped apartment where the telescreen is on one wall and then there's a little nook in the corner where the telescreen can't see.
Ooh.
And that's uncommon. Usually it's positioned so that he can see everything in the whole room.
Oh.
So he's able to kind of like hide himself in this tiny little nook. And he can be heard, but he can't be seen. It's like the only time that he actually, you know, doesn't have to worry about like his facial expressions and shit.
I had one job that I used to work at, and there was one spot where no camera could see you, and it was the only spot in the store, and I would just sit in that one little spot, knowing that they could have watched me go to the spot, but they don't know what I'm doing in the spot. Yeah. And we're like, this is like a person-sized space, like
just big enough for you.
Basically, just that.
Yeah,
like I used to sit there all day. I was like, I don't want to be watched by cameras. Fuck
it's
this
so
shit.
funny and like steal
so
fries.
I identify by Winston.
With Winston?
With him, yeah.
With the constant surveillance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, this space, you couldn't do anything from this space.
Yeah, it was just a hidey hole.
Like for me, it was just a sitting spot. Like there wasn't anything I could do.
Yeah, and I think it's the same for him. He has like a desk there, so he can sit. But if he moves, they'll hear him move, right? So really all he can do is, like sit in this spot. So he lives in, like I said, London, but London is now referred to as Airstrip 1.
What?
Yeah. I don't know.
How many airstrips are there?
No idea. They do describe like where all of these places are. So he lives in Oceania.
Yeah. Oceania?
Yeah, Oceania. Yeah. Because it's ocean, yeah. So you see, like, it's hard to pronounce. But Oceania, I think, is the way to pronounce it. So, tap, tap, tap.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's the sound of your life running out. It's a little Dexter reference for those savvy folks. So he lives in Oceania. Yeah. Which is which is one of 3 superpowers. Oceania, Eurasia, and East Asia.
I think I may have heard this throughout like a decade.
Probably.
Like I've heard little pieces like I've heard Oceania, Eurasia I've heard before. And what was the last one?
East Asia.
East Asia.
And this is something I noticed there's a lot of similarities to Animal Farm. And one of the main ones is that their enemy they're at war with Eurasia and they're at peace with East Asia. Both of those sound identical. Eurasia, East Asia, those are really easy to mix up. Yeah. And they're at war with one, and they love the other one. Yeah. They're at peace with the other one.
Maybe that's why.
It's the same as Mr. Pilkington or Mr. Frederick from Pinchfield and Mr. Pilkington from whatever started with an F. It's the same idea. Like he's basically trying to say that it doesn't matter who your enemies are, they're all faceless.
Right.
If they're not you, they're the other.
They're just... Doesn't matter what they're called.
Yeah.
They're
exactly.
Different,
It doesn't matter what they're called. Like a rose by any other name is still an enemy of yours. I think I corrupted that.
But it smells sweet.
Yeah, it still smells sweet because it's an enemy. So within Airstrip 1, there's 4 ministries. There is the Ministry of Truth, otherwise known as Mini True, and it is concerned with news, entertainment, and education. So it's the one that disperses all the books, all of the media, all the newspapers. So every bit of information goes through the Ministry of Truth.
The Ministry of Truth.
Which is ironic because Winston works at the Ministry of Truth and his job is to fabricate news articles.
Of course.
Such that the news articles match what actually happened. So he'll go back and rewrite an article that made a wrong prediction. So he'll rewrite that article to have a correct prediction.
So that when people go back, they say, look, these guys figured it out.
And then they already knew what they were, they knew exactly what was going to happen.
That's like when somebody's like, oh, our airplane division is called Hawks. We're high altitude, wind resistant experts.
Hawks. Yeah, that does actually sound like it. So there's the Ministry of Truth, the Ministry of Peace, which concerns itself with war. There's the Ministry of Love, which concerns itself with policing and law and order. And then the Ministry of Plenty, which concerns itself with economics.
This is fucking terrifying already.
This is terrifying, yeah.
This sounds like... Have you ever seen Axe Cop?
Not Axe Cop, no.
So a 5-year-old writes it, and then his older brother, who's an animator, does the voices and animates it into a full-on show.
Whoa.
So it's fucking ridiculous.
Because it's written by a 5-year-old.
Yeah. So it's like all over the place, but it's still very interesting because even though he's a 5-year-old can't put the show together, but it doesn't mean a 5-year-old can't write something.
Can't come up with cool ideas.
As ridiculous as it is, like, you know what it is going into it. So he's like, I don't know, fighting a dinosaur on the moon. And then next scene, he's just like back on Earth. But this sounds like a 5-year-old came up with it, where he's like, in the future, there's a Ministry of Truth, and they're responsible for lies. And then the Ministry of Peace, and they're responsible for war. And then Plenty, and they don't give anything to anybody.
Exactly. The Ministry of Plenty is responsible for making sure that nobody has high standards of living. So every ministry is responsible for the opposite of what it's named.
That's brilliant.
It is brilliant because it's... we even do that like in modern times, where you name something that it deliberately isn't because it confuses the conversation.
Yeah.
Right? Talking about the Ministry of Peace, it's hard to keep in mind that the Ministry of Peace is the army.
Well, the word conspiracy is a word for a cover-up, is it not?
No, the word conspiracy means that a group of people conspired together to do something.
Yeah, so a conspiracy theorist is someone who theorizes a conspiration, I guess.
Which is usually to cover something up.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you call something a conspiracy, and people immediately label it incorrect. They're like, you're fucking crazy. It's a conspiracy.
Yeah.
Like, so the term itself
has
betrays
lost its meaning.
It betrays the meaning of
That's a good
what
point.
It's after.
It's really more colloquial now.
Yeah.
Wow. So it gets even darker. The Ministry of Love, which is responsible for law and order, is a 1,000-foot tall concrete pyramid.
1,000-foot tall concrete pyramid. Sorry, for the first time ever, I'm actually writing down my own notes for this show.
It has... Yeah, go for it, bro. You should have your notes. And we both have notes.
Yeah.
So it has no windows whatsoever. It is...
How can you love without windows?
Well, the goal is that way anyone who is imprisoned in the pyramid doesn't know whether they're above ground, below ground, daytime, nighttime. You'd have no idea. And Winston even says that he's never been within 500 meters of the pyramid. It's one of those things that's so heavily guarded that you don't even get to it, let alone inside of it.
Wow.
So it's just this impenetrable fortress.
So it's a prison as well?
So the Ministry of Love is where thought criminals are taken. So
thought criminals.
Yeah, so the way it works in Oceania is that there's no defined laws, but those who are felt to be a risk to the party just disappear. And they bring people up in this environment to rat out others as well.
Have you seen Continuum?
No, you keep telling me about that.
I think you'd like it.
So Vancouver time travel?
Vancouver time travel, and in the future, there is the Corporate Congress. That's what they're actually called.
Yeah. Reminds me of the new founding fathers from the Purge.
Yeah, it's actually very similar, except in this case, they don't hold any games. They just hold everyone's life at ransom. So everyone has a life debt. And if you fuck up, they just add to your life debt. Boom. That's it. Like one time, like the main character, like They're like, you need to save, like, there's a member of corporate Congress on the 5th floor of this burning building, but she knows about, like, a family on a floor below. So she saves the family, and he's like, the corporate Congress member died. You now owe an additional $50,000 on your life debt.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
That's how they dole out punishment, is that just like, if it's not violent, they just make you pay money. So everyone's in debt, inevitably, like an unbelievable amount of debt that you're just going to be in that forever.
Yeah, and the more you try and get out of it, the worse it's going to get.
And the fascinating thing is that because the majority of the show takes place 60 years before that, you are seeing how the corporate Congress is slowly taking hold.
Oh, yeah,
like
I guess.
The original conversations.
The time travel.
That they're like, because the terrorists that they're called, or liberators, depending on your viewpoint, go back as well with this police officer. And they know where corporate Congress came from. So they're bombing places to kill the people that make corporate Congress.
Yeah.
But from the perspective of 2014 Vancouver, it's just terrorism in Vancouver.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. They're innocent people that died.
It's hard to see the perspective there.
Exactly.
Yeah. But that's the thing. You have to protect people's free speech right up until the point that they become the party. And then what do you do?
At what point would you kill a famous massacreist?
Well, I think this book has a lot of that in it. That the whole point about this book is that those that are branded heretics can sometimes be heroes, and those that are branded heroes can sometimes be heretics. So Winston is actually, like, when he's looking out at these posters, he's actually on like a midday break, which is awesome. That means that they're
wow, they do breaks.
They're workers at breaks. Yeah,
that's cool.
He gets to go home, have a little bit of gin, a little piece of dark bread, and then go back to work.
Dark bread, is that a commentary on its own?
I think dark bread just means, like, I don't know why, but I think people associate white bread with nourishment, even though it's the opposite.
It is, yeah.
I think the key is that it's not good bread. It's like the bottom of the barrel wheat. You know, it's not dark because they chose it to be dark. It's dark because it's just, you know, it's probably a little dirty. It's probably a little grimy. Like, they probably don't have clean flour when they make it.
It's
probably
like that,
bake it in shitty ovens.
It's like that dark gelatinous mess that they eat in Snowpiercer.
Yeah, those cubes,
yeah.
Those protein cubes. Yeah. We won't give anything away, but you should go check out Snowpiercer. It's all in this vein of super realistic, super shitty conditions.
I think pretty much every dystopian story is going to come up in this one, because this one,
yeah.
I don't know if this one necessarily invented the dystopia, but it certainly popularized the idea.
It created a narrative that people have never really gotten over. The idea of something being Orwellian means that it's deliberately misleading in that way that I was talking about earlier, with the misnaming and just generally trying to confuse things. And you'll see it gets really bad. The story goes...
It's already fucked up and it's just an introduction.
It goes from kind of fucked up and it gets more and more fucked up as you go, but there's so much writing in it that's just brilliant, like just amazing writing. There's I have a lot of excerpts from this one, because certain sections I actually couldn't really summarize. It made way more sense just to put his words there.
Yeah, he says it best.
So Winston actually has a diary, and you're not, even though, like, again, there's no rules, no one says he can't have a diary, but it's dangerous, because why would he have a diary? What's he writing about, right? There's all these questions that would be asked.
You have nothing to hide.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing to fear if you have nothing to hide. So, and he even says that having the diary is a compromising possession, even when it's empty, even when nothing's written in it. You could still be, like, arrested for that.
It's intention to hide.
Because it's weird. Yeah.
Right.
So he bought this at a junk shop or something like that, and he said, they probably won't give me death, but they might give me 25 years forced labor for it, for finding him with an empty diary. Yeah.
Wow. So this guy, like, he already, like, I don't know how to say this. It's like,
He's a rebel without a cause.
He's a rebel, right? But he is willing to accept the consequences of just recording his own thoughts. So he's already, before there's even, like, a plan here, already clearly one of those people who is going to, like, try to make change. Try to revolt.
Yeah, that's what's kind of strange about this story is that you come to find out later on, like he one time talks about a dream in which he remembers hearing something, and I'll talk about it later, but this story actually starts 7 years before this.
What?
Like if you want to go with like the overall story of Winston Smith, it really starts 7 years before the book. But I guess it wouldn't make like those 7 years weren't important to the story.
So they do little flashbacks? Is that what that is?
There's one or two flashbacks, but what I essentially mean is that Winston's progression towards ultimately being a thought criminal started 7 years earlier.
Okay.
And we'll get to that more. But it's just interesting how they only showed, or George Orwell, I guess, only showed you the section of the story that really like was necessary.
Right.
And that's his ultimate downfall, I guess.
And it's already a long book.
Oh, it's very long.
Sorry.
Yeah, mine's not muted either. We're going to take a quick 2-second break for you people here, and we're both going to mute our devices so that we're not ruining this wonderful thing we're creating. So he's using a pen and inkwell to write in this diary, which is actually strange.
Another 25 years.
Yeah, for the pen. 25 years for the pen and death for the diary.
Yeah, and then 5 more for the ink.
Yeah, exactly. Hanging for 30 years, that's what we'll go with.
Because he used a feather.
Well, yeah, I don't know what kind of pen he used, but I imagine it must have been pretty old style, right? Like if he's using an inkwell.
Stole it from Big Brother's Falcon.
Right from oh my God, just plucked a feather, turned it into a quill. Oh my God. Well, because normally they would use speak writes, which are like essentially, just like you talk into a thing and it writes. So they have computers essentially. See, he predicted that people would be able to speak and that it would be written down for them, but he didn't really have the device over which that would be done.
Interesting, because we don't really even do that. The technology exists now, but
we don't.
Very few people do.
Yeah.
It's like the wrist communicator. Like, we always thought, like, oh, we're going to be doing that, and now we all have devices that are basically what Star Trek has, but we don't use them the way that they use them, where they're, like, constantly connected to somebody else. Like, you have to, like, address communication to somebody specific.
Yeah, we don't use walkie-talkies.
No.
Like they kind of imply.
Which is very interesting. I find it interesting, like, flying cars. Oh, cars are going to be flying. It's like, fucking dangerous. We can't even handle the left and right, or horizontal-based vehicles.
Yeah, well, that's what Elon Musk said.
Yeah.
He said, I don't know if the solution is flying cars, because then you'd constantly have to be worried that people's cars are in good states of repair. Because otherwise you're going to be dropping bolts on people below you.
Or dropping cars on people.
Yeah, a car falls out of the sky.
There's a reason why if an airplane in your airspace doesn't respond to you after a certain amount of time, the military blows it out of the sky.
Yeah, because it's dangerous.
Because of the amount of damage. Like, a runaway bus can take out a small store, but a runaway airplane can take a building out.
Yeah.
Or an entire downtown section.
Yeah, 3 or 4 stores in a row, yeah.
Like, if you had cars that could fly anywhere, that's just fucked. I do not want to live that long.
Pull the car over the building.
Just pull it up to my
you don't have to go around back
balcony
anymore. Yeah, if you needed to load a couch in or out of a building, just pull your van right up to the balcony. That'd be sweet.
Now, I think if we had levitation, I think we would definitely come up with something like the ability to get a couch to a 50th floor by, like, levitating it. But vehicles that can fly, I hope it doesn't ever happen. That's
not in our lifetime.
A dangerous thing. Unless it's, like, flying in a section. Like, they're set up so that they can't fly.
Well,
like,
flying taxis they're working on right now.
Don't work on those. Floating taxis, maybe.
Yeah, but that's impractical.
Like monorail taxis or something. Don't make them fly. Have you seen how taxi drivers drive? They're
that's a very good
nuts,
point.
Man.
Yeah, well, we'll just pilot them with robots.
Fucking, they don't even rolling stop. They just drive.
They won't have to. There won't be stop signs in the air, bro.
They'll be floating.
So Winston starts writing in his thing, but he's not even really writing, like, you or me would probably go, like, to the future, blah, 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 blah. Like, you would write up. He's just kind of writing just blah. Like, there isn't even punctuation sometimes. It's almost like you know how sometimes you feel like you got to scream? Yeah. It's almost like he's doing that on the page.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because he can't scream because the telescreen will hear him. So it's like he's just writing down angry things essentially about the party.
It's like when people type out like an angry email or something, or like a YouTube comment.
Yeah,
They're
exactly.
like,
It just rambles
fucking
on.
Asshole! This is my favorite game ever, and your objective comments are incorrect.
Your objective comments are incorrect. Yeah, there's yeah, so he writes April 4th, 1984, and then he realizes, like, I don't even know if that makes sense. So then here's like a little excerpt. April 4th, 1984. Last night to the flicks. All war films. One very good one of a ship full of refugees being bombed somewhere in the Mediterranean. Audience much amused by shots of a huge fat man trying to swim away with a helicopter after him. First you saw him, like there's just one long thing. He put a period in the middle of a sentence.
Oh.
So it's almost like he's never written before because he hasn't. He uses a speak right so often that he doesn't do this.
It's like when Mad Max finally opens his mouth and he's just like, yes, do that. Like he just like all his like all the filler words. He doesn't use those words anymore because he has no person to talk to.
Yeah, he doesn't need
There's
them.
no reason for them.
Well,
in his head,
actually-
it's just like good, yes, food, there, danger.
And the funny thing is that that's not even it's not even a happenstance thing the way it is in Mad Max, right? Just because he's not around anyone. In 1984, the government has a language called Newspeak. You ever heard that term?
Newspeak.
Newspeak.
All these terms, they feel
They're
like
familiar.
They feel like parody terms. Like if
A
I
little.
wanted to come up with like a parody animation, a lot of these terms would come in there, like you know the peace thing and the plentiful what's-its and speak right. Like it's like a Simpsons joke.
It's true. A lot of it is written to be very generic, but part of that you'll come to realize is that the government's goal is to make things generic.
Right.
The more generic you make things, the more people become subservient.
Okay.
Well, so when he goes back to work, this is so messed up. But so when he goes back to work, they do what's called the 2-minute hate. And so,
What?
so everyone goes and sits down in a room together.
The 2-minute hate.
And this girl comes in, this like dark-haired girl, and she's got a sash on from the Junior Anti-Sex League, which is exactly what it sounds like.
What?
It's a league for kids to like support abstinence and
Well, the best way to not get pregnant is abstinence.
yeah. But it goes beyond that. It goes like sex for any reason other than creating children is considered an affront to the party. Yeah. So she comes in, and Winston doesn't have very much of a like for women, but that's part like they've generated that through things like the Anti-Sex League. So this guy comes in named O'Brien, who ends up being one of the more important characters in the story. But so O'Brien reminds me of you've seen Hugo Strange from Gotham, right?
No. I'm familiar with him through Arkham City.
I think his name's like TK Wong or something like that.
Okay. There's a couple spoilers I got in Gotham by reading ahead, like by going up on like Wikipedia, where I'm like, why is this character focused on? Because he doesn't seem to have anything. And they're like, oh yeah, he dies and then turns into a superhero. And I'm like, what the fuck?
Why are you reading ahead, bro? Just watch and it'll tell
Because he's a cool actor. I want to know why he's in the show.
So yeah, so he kind of reminds me of that character. I don't know what else to describe him from, but he's a very large man, this O'Brien character. And what's weird about this whole story is that members of the outer party wear blue coveralls, like over their whole body. Coveralls, like go all the way up to your neck.
Like they're operating, like they're fixing a
heavy machinery or something.
machinery.
Yeah. And then the members of the inner party, the ones who are like the highest members of society, wear black coveralls.
Of course.
So everyone of power is wearing coveralls for the whole book. They don't constantly comment on it, but yeah, if you're not one of the regular like masses, you're wearing coveralls.
I think that's kind of similar. The dystopia, like all these stories are just coming out. We've already talked about Mad Max. Now I'm going to talk about Hunger Games. The first time I saw the I guess stormtroopers of the Capitol on that show, they are the silliest fucking looking dudes. They have like sheen fucking helmets on. They look so silly the way that they're like all in white. But you see them all like punch children in the face a couple times.
Jesus.
And then like the top shit guys like punching people and like trying to execute them, and then you start to associate these silly uniforms with how serious they actually are.
Yeah.
It's like you can take anything like coveralls and make people start to associate. It's all what it is, because the only reason why we think coveralls aren't a powerful thing is because they're a blue collar uniform.
But I think the reason they do it is the same reason when you go to a restaurant, everyone's wearing those shitty uniforms. It's because you don't want people's bodies to have shape. You want everyone to just be kind of this blue glom.
Oh, I hate going to a place and I'm like, is that person working here?
Yeah.
Am I going to offend them? Because I've had people ask me questions and I'm like, I don't work here.
Yeah, I've had that before. At a couple of a bulk barn, that happens to me a lot because I go to bulk barn all the time and like I know my way around that store, so people will occasionally
like, hey, you look like you eat here.
Well, someone asked me a question and I answered it, and then she said, "Oh, do you work here?" And I said, "No." Yeah. But I knew the answers, so like, I don't know, just being helpful. So the 2-minute hate is this thing where they sit everyone down and they play this video of this guy, Emmanuel Goldstein. And he is the leader. You gotta write that one down. Emmanuel Goldstein. He is supposedly the leader of the Brotherhood, which is this resistance organization that fights against the party.
So there's an official hate speech video by the leader of the rebellion?
Yeah, so the idea is they show the speech of the leader of the rebellion talking, and then everyone starts like booing at the screen, and someone throws a book. And like the idea is that you literally sit down for 2 minutes to generate hate.
Oh.
But the strange thing, Winston points out, is that despite all of these years of the 2-minute hate being pointed at Goldstein and everyone ragging on him and how his ideas suck, somehow he never goes away. Right? It's not like we've conquered him and he's now done. He's always there. He kind of reminds me of Snowball from
Can I guess
what
this character's all about?
Goldstein?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is he a government plant?
Well, no, he's not a real character.
Oh.
He's almost like Big Brother.
Oh.
They're characters that have almost been fabricated. Well, you don't really know. He could be out there. There could be a brotherhood, but he doesn't become a character. He's not Goldstein is a figurehead. And that's why he reminds me of Snowball from Animal Farm.
Right.
Because Snowball runs off and then he's just used as this catch-all term for bad things.
Yeah.
It's the same idea. Goldstein, maybe he existed once, but now he's just this idea that they use to, rile people up.
Yeah. This is very interesting. This is all like I'm picturing this in my head, and it's why I think some things should never be made into movies, because I don't think I want like my illusions of this. Like, first of all, I'm imagining this entire place is cloud covered and it appears to be night all the time. For some reason, that's just the way that
cloudy.
imagine.
Cloudy all the time is definitely what I picture.
Have you read The City Underground? You may like it. I mean, it might be for kids because I haven't read it since I was a kid, but it was one of the only books I was actually interested in. And it's all about a city underground that they say, like, you can't go above ground. And this one kid figures out how to go above ground and realizes it's actually not
dark all the time.
I mean, no, it actually is dark, I think. I can't remember how it goes, but essentially, like, they're lying about how you can't go back up.
Of course, yeah, it's always.
I can't remember where it goes. It would be very interesting if, like, there was, like, things up there.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure there should be things up there.
Oblivion. Oblivion is a fantastic movie about.
Oh yeah.
About lies and stuff like that.
Yeah, the potential for lies and how those in power can lie so easily to those they have power over. Well, I'll give you some perspective on what this world feels like inside, like how these people live. Mm-hmm. We got a quote here somewhere. Where is it? I gotta find a quote. No, hang on.
Where's that fucking quote?
Where is it? Where is it? Swear to me!
Where's the quote?
It's a good thing I noted all these quotes, because otherwise I would not be able to find this for sure.
Wow, that sound.
Yeah, here it is.
Soundbite is so much bigger than everything else.
Swear to me? Yeah. Okay, so this is later on. Winston's in the canteen, which is like the place where they feed all the.
Any requests? Same song.
Play that same song. So in the canteen, it says, he looked around the canteen, a low ceiling, crowded room, its walls grimy from contact with innumerable bodies, battered metal tables and chairs placed so close together that you sat with elbows touching, bent spoons, dented trays, coarse white mugs, all surfaces greasy, grime in every crack, and the sourish composite smell of bad gin, bad coffee, metallic stew, and dirty clothes. That's what the whole world is like.
Yes.
It hasn't been cleaned in 20 years.
But
But
you never seen my workplace.
oh,
I'm joking. It's not
if it was that bad, I would go in there and shut you guys down and bring a health inspector with me. Grimy surfaces.
No, I mean it always passes, so
you'd be fine.
Yeah.
You'd be fine. Grimy surfaces, whatever.
that's actually, that kind of reminds me of the Ark on the 100.
Oh.
Like everything,
Yeah, that's
everything in there.
true.
I'm like, how often does it get cleaned?
But you have to imagine that in an environment like that, they probably want everything to be clean because of how like easily something could spread. But in this world, they don't care what happens to the individuals. What does he describe it as? I don't remember if he describes each person as being a cell in an organism or as like a hair on the head of an organism.
Yeah.
They're like tiny components that are not. Oh yeah. Later on, O'Brien is comparing the people like to the organism, the party, and he said, you don't mourn when you clip your fingernails or cut your hair, right? Even though they're a part of you,
Right.
they're not essential to you.
Interesting.
So that's how he sees people, as the hair and the fingernails of society. They're there to do a task, but you don't mourn when they're not there anymore.
This is how Winston thinks?
No, this is how the party sees it.
Oh, of course it is.
Yeah.
Right.
So when this hate ends, this 2-minute hate, they chant Big Brother for 30 seconds, which sounds really
That's
kind of
awkward,
aggressive.
man.
Yeah, 30
That's a
seconds
lot-
is a long time.
It's a long time to be saying the same word.
Like, we haven't even been talking about this for 30 seconds. So
that's-
just imagine, Big Brother, a whole room full of
that's
people.
basically 30 Big Brothers. Like, that's probably just
More,
short.
maybe even like 50 or 60, because you say it pretty quick. Big Brother.
Oh, I guess it's probably less than a second.
Yeah, and there's just fucking. Anyways, that's how they rile people up, and they do that at work. That's a midday thing. You know, no coffee break. You get your 2-minute hate.
The Japanese go to the roof to exercise and stretch, while as the Orwellians chant Big Brother.
Yeah, they go to a room to be pissed off. So he says that when people disappear, Winston's talking now. He says when people disappear, it's called being vaporized. Because you don't disappear in the classic sense where your name goes into a file and, you know, you're a disappeared person, you're a missing person, and then after a while everyone just forgets about you. No. You get totally lifted out of the stream of time.
Just incinerated.
So you disappear. Every trace of you disappears. People who remember you will disappear. So people will just forget that you were there.
Fuck.
So you disappear completely. There's no trace that you were even there in the first place.
Wow.
That's why they call it vaporization, because you're gone. Just scattered to the winds.
Well, imagine how many people we wouldn't know about if someone decided to rewrite history. Or imagine how many people we believe we understand.
But we don't, yeah.
That's like the difference between what, like, the movie Braveheart and the actual guy. Like,
Yeah.
like there's even simple things that they changed around in that. Like I'm pretty sure he was actually a highborn noble.
Oh, really?
In,
Not a commoner?
in real life, yeah. They got some things right. Like the war started because I think it was the English claimed like possession over the wives of the Scottish, which like that was correct, but like they like William Wallace is like a poor person in the movie.
I think they took everything that worked for them. They kept everything that worked and they got rid of everything that didn't. And that's the same idea. Anything that's advantage to them, they keep. Anything that's a disadvantage to them, they get rid of.
I think they could have made that movie out of a highborn noble. It really wouldn't have been that bad.
I just meant that, like, that's what the government does.
Oh.
And, you know, if you have the ability to choose what data makes it to the end user, you pick what you like and you get rid of what you don't. It's the same concept.
It's like the movie Aragon.
Oh, geez, I haven't seen it and I don't
You
want to.
you just liked the guy that casted for it, and you didn't want to dye his hair, so you're like, fuck it, whatever. He's blonde, I guess.
It's That's pretty important. Hair color, like you can get that one down.
Hair and eye color were incorrect.
Oh,
How much bad? Like look
not
at
the greatest.
look at
casting.
Harry Potter, the original illustration of Harry Potter, and look at Daniel fucking Radcliffe. It's
When he's
actually
that age.
amazing.
Yeah, it's
how like close they are.
Pretty close, yeah. So he goes back home to write his diary midday. I guess a 2-minute hate happened before. So he's at home and he's just writing in his diary, down with Big Brother, like constantly, like just one line after another, down with Big
Whatever
Brother.
makes you happy, I guess.
Well, think about it. If you have no other outlet, writing that down is probably the most intense thing he's done in years.
I guess in my head, when I don't like what people do, like when they say the same bullshit over and over again, like every day, and I'm so used to it, and they say it over in like a different corner of work, in my head, I'm like, shut up. Shut the fuck up.
In your head, yeah.
Fuck you.
Yeah.
And that's my way of getting like over it,
That's
right?
what he's doing.
Yeah.
He's writing it in the diary instead. So at this point, his neighbor knocks on his door. Her sink needs to be repaired. Mrs. Parsons is her name.
You got to sync, kids. Sync's very important.
Always sync your audio and video. So apparently this place was built in the 1930s, Victoria Mansion.
Oh.
So it's old and it hasn't been repaired properly. So basically you kind of have to take care of all the repairs yourself because no one's going to come and do them. There is no infrastructure for that.
They don't have a tenant agreement.
And no, not exactly.
No, you got to get that.
Well-
Always get a proper tenant agreement before you move in.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So he's crouching down underneath the sink and he starts coughing, and I'm guessing because there's probably mold.
Yeah.
But also at the same time he has an ulcer in one of his ankles.
Oh.
So he has
Oh.
Yeah, so he's not in great health, and he's 39. So he's already fallen apart because
Yeah.
they don't really have health care, right? They don't really eat well.
Oh, so this didn't take place in Canada.
No, so Mrs. Parsons is overweight? I didn't know that. Oh, Mr. Parsons. Okay. He's just, I was
gonna say you wrote those.
I thought her husband. Yeah, okay, so her husband is this fool who's just referred to as Parsons. He's just this fat, weird dude who loves wearing shorts, always smells like sweat, and
Okay, does he just wear shorts, or is it like expressed that he loves them?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like so.
Like as a paragraph on shorts?
Essentially, anytime he has any excuse to wear shorts, he will. Because otherwise he has to wear his coveralls, right, when he's at work. So anytime there's like a community event or an outdoor thing or whatever, he's always in shorts, 100%. And he's just 100% devoted to the party. He is completely, blindly an ideal member for the party, which means that also his kids are too. So his kids are members. Go for it.
No, sorry. I don't want to keep interrupting with dystopian concepts, but
you said they were all going to come up.
On Amazon Prime Video, there's a fantastic Aaron Paul show called The Path, and it's about a guy who is Aaron Paul is this guy who got into a cult. This is like modern day too. It's very well done. He got into a cult after a really extreme circumstance in his life. And the show is about him trying to like break out of it by first like he has to mentally figure out that he's being lied to in the first place, and he's also married to a woman who was born into the cult.
So it's not a dystopia world.
They're kind of living in a dystopia of their own.
Yeah, but not the whole.
But it appears to be this absolute Garden of Eden. It's very well done. I haven't seen very much of it, but Aaron Paul's fantastic.
Yeah, he is. Okay.
More Aaron Paul.
Interesting. Yeah, so Parsons' children are members of the Spies, which is this thing for kids. What?
A kids program called The Spies.
Yeah, I think they might be called the Youth Spies or something like that.
Nice.
But the goal is actually to train the kids to spy on their parents and on adults.
What year did you say? 45 this was written?
I think so.
45. So Orwell's got the entire Second World War to pull this information from, because that was a big part of the war, was Germany's ability to convince the German people that what was happening was not what was happening. Because if they knew, it wouldn't have been the same thing.
Yeah, misinformation is very important when it comes to this.
What were they called? The Hitler's Youth or something like that?
Yeah, the HJ.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was more like a criminal gang, right? The HJ was more of an additional member, like an additional branch of the military, Whereas
Yeah.
in this case, the youth spies is more of a like the scouts.
Right.
But they also teach them, like, you know, these are what bad people look like. Like, these are suspicious activities you should report. That kind of shit.
But yeah, do you remember in Swing Kids? Have you seen Swing Kids?
Oh, yeah.
You remember that when he delivers the package to that woman and he just thinks it's like, he doesn't know what it is. They didn't tell him what it is, and it's an ear.
Yeah, or no, wasn't it her husband? It was a box full of ashes.
Something like that.
And her husband's wedding ring was in it.
Yes. Right. It was like, that's what I mean. Like, they think they're part of this, like, wonderful youth group where you're like, they teach you how to, like, take care of yourself, but you're actually, like, doing the bidding of this horrible, I guess, would it be a monarchy?
No, not
dictatorship.
A monarchy. Totalitarian government.
Totalitarian.
It's hard to really tell because it's
worse than dictator.
Totalitarian means you have entire control over your population. So a dictatorship would be a totalitarian government.
Oh, okay.
But it's not really a dictatorship because the dictator, Big Brother, doesn't really exist. He's more of a figurehead.
Yeah.
So it's almost a perpetual motion machine in a way.
He's like Ronnie McDowney.
No.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Because you don't put what is it, Ralph, what is his name? The guy who, like,
Ray Kroc.
Ray Kroc. You don't put him on the cover.
But he's still the mastermind. Whereas in this, it's no one actually knows who's in charge. It's this.
Yeah, but kids think that Ronnie's a real thing, right?
Yeah, so people think Big Brother's a real thing.
Right.
Yeah, in the same sense. But I just mean that the way Big Brother's being used is different. Big Brother is being used as a focusing point for all happiness, all anger, all whatever. He's being used as, like, the gem at the center of the party.
He's like Uncle Sam.
A little bit.
I would think that was probably
Uncle Sam,
pretty close, a much closer.
Much closer analogy, yeah. Because it's something that people probably inherently know Big Brother doesn't exist, but they hear his voice on the telescreen. So that makes it a little easier to forget about the fact that you've never seen him.
Played by a legendary voice actor?
Probably. Nice. Yeah, they probably just kept James Earl Jones alive. Right? Oh, wait, this is in 1984.
Yeah.
So they found James Earl Jones, and they're just like, this guy's fucking sick. We're going to make him...
Did the first Star Wars come out in 79?
Something like that.
Might have been earlier.
So he was already old enough to be...
So he would have been
himself.
Like, perfect.
But he was probably born, and he just went straight into the Big Brother recording booth.
Is Big Brother.
Yeah.
Look out for the rebellion.
Probably something like that.
They're nasty and stuff.
So the children, Parsons' children that are running around, the ones that are in the spies, they're disappointed. And I think they're even yelling at their mom, but they're disappointed that they didn't get to go to the hangings because they hung a bunch of prisoners.
Fuck.
Yeah.
This is like a weird combination. Like the dystopian futures always hold things that we know as the past. Like hangings were a very common thing, and like they stopped in, like, I don't know. I think the last one that they recorded in our world is like the 70s, and it didn't happen here. But I watched Gangs of New York like a little bit back, and like hangings were like super fun. It was like a family gathering.
Everyone used to go to it. Yeah, well, there's no TV back then.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, and people say this is the worst generation. So the children have now become menaces to the parents. Like the parents, their dad is a forever dedicated party member, so he doesn't care. But the mom is always terrified because you have these two little monsters running around, and they don't even really know how to control them. And apparently every week in the Times, there's a child hero, which is someone who's ratted out their parents to the thought police.
Child hero.
That's what they call them, yeah.
Huh.
So this is where I was talking about. So 7 years ago, 7 years before this part of the book, Winston had a dream. And in that dream, he heard O'Brien say, "We shall meet in the place where there is no darkness." Yeah.
Well, like where the sun like peers through the clouds or something?
Well, you come to find out later, the place where there is no darkness is, again, sort of one of those ironic things. He's probably referring to the Ministry of Love, which has no windows.
Oh.
So there's no darkness because there's no light. All the light is unnatural, so there's never any darkness.
Huh.
Yeah, that's the belief. So he's doing the same thing. The place where there is no darkness is not the place where there's the most light. It's actually the place where there's the most controlled light. But there's that moment in the dream, and he's not sure if that's real. But then at the end of the 2-minute hate, he sees a glimmer in O'Brien's eyes. Just a little glimmer, and he thinks that might be a sign that O'Brien is not like a faithful party member.
Oh.
Because you don't have anything else to go off. You can't ask people. You can't just be like, hey, are you an infidel? Right? You have to go off these like little things, these like twitches of the mouth or whatever.
Have you betrayed the government recently?
Yeah, are you into the act of betrayal? It reminds me of that scene from Valkyrie where he says, I am involved in conspiracy at the highest level with all means available to me. Are you in?
Oh.
It's just like, holy crap.
I mean,
say yes or die.
At a certain point, it doesn't like if you're already gonna betray like a part of the government during World War II in Germany, it's like you're betraying the government either way.
Yeah.
Highest level of government, lowest level of
Doesn't
government.
matter.
No.
Does not matter. So Winston decides that it doesn't matter if O'Brien is his enemy or his friend. He feels like he needs to find out. Like he needs to push forward regardless of whether O'Brien's trying to help him or O'Brien is like actually, faithful to the party. He needs to know.
Right.
So at this point he hears an announcement that there's been a major victory in India. And so because of that major victory in India, they're sort of using it to mask the fact that the next announcement is that they're going to be reducing the chocolate rations to 20.
Not the chocolate rations.
Yeah, so they're reducing the chocolate rations down, and they're sort of hiding it by putting it behind an announcement of victory. Right? They're trying to make it less
never
bitter.
Waste a good crisis.
Exactly. So at this point he's talking about you can hear rocket bombs, which are exactly what they sound like.
Rocket bombs.
Like missiles, right? That he says 20 to 30 land on London each week.
What?
Rocket bombs.
On London. Are they in London?
Yeah. And this isn't even like that uncommon. He's actually in a rocket bomb explosion at one point.
What?
He's walking in the downtown and all of a sudden everyone starts disappearing from the streets. Like people just start running into their houses. So he like essentially just dives face first on the ground. A rocket bomb just goes off down the street. And then when he's walking, he sees like a severed hand and he just kicks it out of his way.
Jesus.
Yeah, so that's just what people do. He's covered in white dust from plaster. And
so they're in war, but what? Yeah. Jesus.
So they're at war.
India. How far is India from London?
Very far away.
So they have is that I don't know a lot about rockets, but how close are they firing these from India?
Probably not. Well, The big question is the government themselves firing them upon the people?
I mean, that's my first thought. Yeah,
that's the biggest one. But ultimately, they're constant. That's something that just keeps happening.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What kind of explosions are these?
Like large enough to level a building.
Jesus.
Just kaboom! That building's gone. There's now a hole. And then everyone around that, probably injuries and just general mayhem.
Do they have, I'm guessing they have hospitals, right?
They don't talk about
Or
hospitals.
Are people just kind of left to their own thing, deal with it?
Yeah, I think you have to deal with it. I don't even think they have hospitals. Because they never talk about one throughout the whole book.
That kind of feels like something you talk about.
Yeah, if it was there.
Yeah.
Because, that's a good point. I've never heard any mention in the whole book of a hospital. Any sort of care of anybody. Mostly people, because I think the way it works is most people end up being captured and murdered before their health declines.
They probably just have personal doctors for the higher ups and shit.
Even then, I don't think the higher ups I don't think they value the lives of the inner party members much more than the lives of the masses.
Really?
I don't think so.
Huh.
I think there's even one scene where Winston's looking up at an inner party member, and the party member says, you can see that my face is tired, and you're asking me, how can we be immortal if we can't even keep ourselves from aging? And he says, that's what you don't get. I'm not immortal. The party is immortal. That's what matters. Not what happens to me, but what's going to happen, overall.
Right, like when a company's been around since the 1800s, but
It's not about an individual. It's
nobody
about the company.
that was part of that is around anymore.
It's the same as a boat. If you replace every single board, it's still the same boat. Kind of not. Yeah.
I don't know if it's important.
It's not.
It's still a boat. It floats.
So this is one part where Winston is actually horribly wrong. He says, nothing is yours except for the few inches within your skull, right?
Right.
Like you're inside your head. Like you said, when someone's talking to you and you're like, fuck you, like, I hate you, shut up, this sucks.
He says it in Truman Show. He said, you never had a camera up in here. You never knew what I was actually thinking. You could watch me through the mirrors, but you didn't know what was actually in my head. That's the one place you could never put a camera.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So he thinks about the fact that he's writing this diary, and he realizes that it's kind of a moot point because either he writes the words and they're suppressed before they can help anyone,
right?
Or he writes the words and they're not suppressed, but then they're not needed. Because if they're not being suppressed, his words aren't required to keep them from being suppressed.
Right.
So he sort of realizes that it is hopeless. Like it's not, nothing fruitful is going to come of it, of writing. But it doesn't stop him still.
He needs it as it's an outlet for him.
Essentially. And he keeps dreaming. He dreams about his mother a lot because his mother died in the pre-party times, like back when he was young. So he has these dreams of his mother and his sister, who was an infant at the time. And they're always below him, and they're always sinking, like they're in like the lower part of a ship that's filling with water.
Was that my stomach?
It might have been, no, I think it might have been a water bottle releasing some pressure or something.
I don't know. I think that was my stomach.
Could have been your stomach. And he always dreams of this golden land. Like sometimes when later on he's in prison and he dreams of being like carted down these kilometer wide corridors. Just this massive sun-filled golden corridor, and that's like his go-to place. He calls it the Golden Land, or the the Golden
I guess
Country.
Fairly common, like the idea, like hope, the idea of
an
like
escape,
a
mental escape, yeah. And so when he finally does wake up, they have to do what they call the physical jerks. I thought this was hilarious. So that's what they call exercise. Physical jerks.
Physical jerks.
Yeah. So all the 30 and 40-year-olds do it together because obviously it's going to be different for like age groups. So for some reason he's thinking about his childhood during this moment. I guess that's one of those things you probably spend a lot of your time just daydreaming when you live in this world.
Yeah.
And he's thinking about this time when the rocket bombs started falling, and he remembers cowering in a subway tunnel, like a subway platform with all these other people, and like looking at these old couples sitting around and wondering like, what's going to happen now? Like, where do we even go from here? And so while he's doing this, the woman like who's leading them through everything, this is when she starts talking to him through the telescreen. She's like, Smith, like, I see you, like, you know, you got to do better than that. Like, see if you can touch your toes. And then that's what he's able to do. He jerks his way down to like touch his toes. And every time I read that section, I'm like, God, you're not supposed to do that.
No, you're really not supposed to do that.
You're not supposed to bounce. You're not supposed to do that at all. And then, so they finish up the physical jerks, and that's like it's the morning thing that they do. They only show it once, which I think is weird, because the book takes place over a long period of time, but they only mention them one time. It doesn't even mention like after the physical jerks, blah blah blah.
Probably not
necessary
to show it, multiple times.
The other weird thing that he starts to note on is that the mentions of Big Brother go back to before the party even took power.
Oh.
So, like, the mentions of Big Brother's accolades and what he's done for the party go back to before Winston remembers the party even being there. So he knows that at least some of the stories are fabricated because he didn't even hear about Big Brother.
Right.
And these stories have been put into history. Right? They've been set into time. They haven't been recorded.
So older people are dangerous.
Yes, old people are dangerous. You should know that. So the principles behind which all of this stays afloat is called INGSOC. INGSOC. But really it's short form for English socialism.
Oh.
That's the root of it all is English socialism.
But that's more of a lie in this situation.
Because it's not socialism.
It's not.
That's a good point.
It's not an even divide.
But that's where the original principles were in English socialism, and then it all sort of spread out from there.
Yeah.
And the three people who know the book are probably pissed because I didn't mention the three major slogans of the party. So these are actually super important. You're going to want to write these down. War is peace. Freedom is slavery.
War.
We'll let you go one at a time.
Peace. Freedom is what?
Slavery.
Of course.
And ignorance is strength.
Oh, shit.
So the interesting thing about each of these, this is mentioned quite a bit later on in the books, each of them can be read backwards. War is peace sounds very nonsensical, but peace is war actually makes more sense.
Right.
Because the way they keep peace among their people is by being at war with these other countries.
Right, of course.
Then slavery is freedom, right? If you put that one backwards. What they're saying is that true freedom enslaves you. It's like in Spartacus. Gannicus says the only time you're truly free is as a slave because you have no control over your actions.
Mm-hmm. When man is given a choice, he is condemned to it.
To it, yes. And also, strength is ignorance. Strength is ignorance because in this society, without ignorance, you're condemned to death.
Right.
So ignorance actually becomes the only thing that protects you from the society itself.
Well, I've been thinking about this for a long time. I know a lot of people who do this, like, I can't take this anymore. Like, they get upset about the same things that I just deal with. And they feel like it's a strength of theirs that they don't put up with shit. It's a weakness because you're allowing it.
It's a bit of both.
In some cases, it can be a strength by not letting someone push you around. But when you can't do anything about it and you just keep saying, fuck this, but you don't do anything about it,
then
it's
that's
a
a waste. Yeah, that's a huge waste
of
energy.
People talk to me like I'm dirt all the time, and I'm like, absolutely, no problem. I just don't give a fuck about you. I'm not going to think about you past the moment that I bring it up on the podcast.
Yeah, you're going to leave the store, and that's going to be it.
Even employees that I speak to, like the way that they speak to me too, I don't care. Most people, like, they make up a whole fucking conflict about it, and then it just goes on. Like, just fucking get over it.
And that's why in our society, ignorance is weakness.
Yeah.
But in their society, it is strength.
It would be in that situation. Yeah.
So at the ministry where he works, Ministry of Truth, they have memory holes, which are all over the building. Every hallway, every room has a memory hole, which is just a little, like, imagine a mail slot. You just flip up the little grating and you throw whatever you want inside, and then it goes straight to an incinerator.
A memory hole. So what do you put in there?
Anything you want to destroy. Anything you don't want to remember.
So everything is exactly the opposite of what it actually is. So Oceania is not even close to an ocean?
No, it is. It's London, right? London and South Africa are both part of Oceania.
So
I think South America.
East Asia is actually on West Asia?
No, East Asia, I'm pretty sure, is actually the eastern portions of Asia. So it would include China and Indonesia.
Interesting. And
then Eurasia, I think, is parts of Europe, Russia, and the Middle East.
Oh, okay.
So imagine North America, Eastern Asia, and Middle Asia as being the three areas.
So he lives in the middle one.
No, he lives in technically the one that's like Western. Because he's in London, but it's only because like the British Isles, I think.
Yeah.
What do they call it? United...
Well, it's United Kingdom.
United Kingdom, yeah. Because that whole area.
Yeah.
Right? But I'm talking about actually the whole United Kingdom, including Ireland and Scotland. Is that it? Ireland, Scotland? Is Wales an island?
It's Wales, England, Scotland, and Ireland.
Okay.
Everything but Ireland is the British Isles. All four are the UK. And... No.
Northern Ireland and Ireland don't get along.
I can't remember how it goes. It's like you can draw like 4-5 different like dissections of how that place is built as cut up.
When you look at the map though and see where Scotland connects to Britain, you can really see how the plot of Doomsday came about.
Yeah.
Because it's got one big connection on land and then water.
Yeah.
So it actually works so perfectly for that story.
Actually, I think it's Northern Ireland,
Yeah.
England, Scotland, and Wales are the United Kingdom. Because Southern Ireland, I don't think is part of the UK.
Oh, really?
I think that's what there was an entire like decades of conflict over that, over like freeing up Northern Ireland.
Reminds me of something I read. Someone says you can't be a patriotic American and a Nazi.
Yeah.
They literally had a war over it. The whole world was involved.
I was thinking about that. How did that happen? Probably the same way that everything does, slowly. You know?
Slowly, but at the same time, sometimes people don't recognize like the full implications of things. You know, you had that point about doggy circumcision, about people not supporting it for the right reasons.
Right.
I think sometimes people look at half of the reasons they love something, and that's all they need. You know, I love America because it's A, B, C, and D.
Right.
I love Nazis because they're A, B, C, and D.
Right.
But you're not going into the E through Z part of both of those lists.
Someone's gonna take that out of context. They're just gonna be like, look, Derek loves Nazis.
I like Nazis and America because of A, B, C, and D.
And then they're gonna take me saying like, yep, Derek loves Nazis.
And put it together. You know what? Send me the audio file.
Yeah.
Someone makes that, send me the file. Where was okay, so we got way sidetracked by where he lives and being near oceans.
Now let's continue on Nazis.
And so these memory holes are supposed to be there so that everything can just be destroyed as soon as you're done with it. And so Winston's job at the ministry is that he gets these little slips, and they'll say something on it like, well, here.
Is there an excerpt?
Oh,
coming
there's
up?
definitely an excerpt coming up. So I'm just gonna read one to you, and then I'll explain what it means. So this is a simple instruction he'd be sent. Times 17,348. Sorry, 17,384. So that's just the date. BB speech malreported Africa rectify. It's the whole thing. So here's a much more complicated one. Times 3/12/83. Reporting BB day order double plus ungood refs unpersons rewrite full wise up sub anti filing.
What the fuck?
Okay, so I'll explain that longer one. If possible, we might even want to put the quote on the screen just for this particular one because it's so technical. We'll see. It may not happen. People can just listen. So times 3/12/83 is the article in the Times. So it's the 12th day of the third month, 1983. A Times article was written. So that's a start. Reporting BB means the daily report, reporting BB day order is the daily report that Big Brother makes. Because every day Big Brother makes an address.
Right.
And then double plus ungood means double plus, so very, very
Not good.
ungood, not good. So not good. Because it refs unpersons. It refers to someone who is now not a person anymore. So that means it refers to someone they've disappeared. Because now they technically don't exist. So how can you refer to someone who doesn't exist?
Right.
And then it says rewrite full wise. It's pretty straightforward.
Right.
Up sub anti-filing. That means before you submit it, send it upstairs to be approved before it's going to get put out there. So all of it makes sense, but when you read it, it sounds like gibberish.
There's a scene like that in Patriot, where this one guy has to explain to the operative who's undercover what he's going to be doing when he gets to Luxembourg, but he's in front of everyone in the company that he's going to that he's undercover for.
Oh, jeez.
And he has to pretend that he has to pretend he's his husband. He's like, "I'm your husband," and he's like, "Okay," and he says, "I just like to say it to remind you." Okay, and he's like, 2 p.m. Big guys, money might be there. 5 p.m. It's just like he just keeps like he says
code.
it so fast, it's fucking hilarious. And at the end, like the guy's just like, "Yeah, I did it."
So that's what Winston does. Is he takes these things, he has to translate them, decide figure out what they mean, and then rewrite articles. So he says there's never any forgeries. They never forge anything.
Of course.
Because you remember the word rectify?
Right.
He said they're always errors or slips or misprints. It's never change this article. It's always, we made a misprint, rewrite it.
Of course.
Right? So he says this is done with everything. Media, pictures, records, photos are pictures, movies, anything. Any piece of media that exists, they'll edit.
Oh.
Even pamphlets, they'll find, change, and destroy the originals.
Wow.
And they even have a whole division which is just for collecting and destroying things which are out of date or don't match like with what the party says.
This is very well organized.
It's very well organized, and that's what's so creepy about it all. It's the ultimate in bureaucracy. Bureaucracy grows so much in this story to the point where it actually controls the whole world. And there's no way to stop it. There's too much momentum. It's like a big rock rolling down a steep hill.
Yeah, I was very fascinated by a Joe Rogan guy that was on there that did a whole. He like went to North Korea and he's extremely well versed in it. And he was talking about how the system in North Korea is so intense, and so kind of like almost automated by how many people are part of it, that even if the leader wanted to change, if he softened up, he'd be assassinated and replaced.
Jesus.
Like someone else who's like right next to him would just kill
over.
him as soon as they no longer feared for their lives. They would kill him, take over, and just continue. It would be a ridiculous system to try to change around that country.
That's what it's about.
Yeah.
The funny thing for me is anytime they talk about it being forever, I just keep thinking asteroid. It's not forever. Nothing is forever.
Nothing is forever.
Your planet isn't forever.
Oh, you have 350 Bros Play episodes? Asteroid.
Yeah, exactly.
Or even a giant magnet on the YouTube servers.
But he even goes so far to say that what he's doing is not really a forgery when you imagine that what was originally written probably wasn't even true. Right?
Right.
He's being given a report that's probably not true and then writing something that's probably not true. So realistically, nothing has actually changed for the most part. He's not forging as much as he's reforging.
Are you telling me that this government subscribes to the Assassin's Creed?
I don't know. What is the Assassin's Creed?
Nothing is real. Everything is permitted.
Nothing is real. Everything is permitted. No. Well, yes. Half and half.
Okay.
Nothing is real, but nothing is permitted. Right? So the boring version of the Assassin's Creed.
One time when you were away for university, you sent me a meme or something like that, and it was like the Student's Creed. Everything is due, nothing is submitted. That's beautiful.
That's so perfect. I used to have a meme I really liked. It was due tomorrow, due tomorrow.
That was me in university or in college. I couldn't afford university.
Oh my god. So when he's talking about some of these reports, one of the things he had to do, one of the anti-filing things, was a forecast that was done wrong. So the Ministry of Plenty put out a forecast, and so he's revising the forecast. So it went from 145 million boots was what they estimated, but they actually only produced something like 60 million boots.
Oh.
So he's going back and he'll put in things like he'll put 57 million boots because, it looks like they slightly underestimated, but they were close. So he says here, this is an excerpt now, a great deal of the time you were expected to make up facts from your head. For example, the Ministry of Plenty had estimated the output at 145 million. The actual output was given at 62 million. However, in rewriting, he marked it down for 57 million, so as to allow for the usual claim that the quota had been overfilled. In any case, 62 million was no nearer to the truth than 57 or 145 million. Very likely no boots were produced at all. Still, likelier still, nobody knew how many boots had produced or even cared. All one knew was that every quarter, astronomical numbers of boots were produced on paper, while perhaps half of the population of Oceania went barefoot.
Wow.
So
barefoot, or is that
an
exaggeration? No.
No. You come to find out that even though he lives in squalor, Winston, the proles, they call them, the proletarians, the ones that are just the general masses, live in way more squalor.
Really?
Like to the point where they have to fight over saucepans and shit. Like, yeah, they have nothing, the proles. And what he's pointing out here is that it's not really a forgery because all of it's a forgery. If everything is fake, you can't lie about a lie because it's still a lie. It's not like in math where a negative and a negative make a positive. All of it's just bullshit. It keeps getting funneled down a toilet, essentially, right? So he's part of the system, but it's not like we are the lie tellers.
Right.
You're really just the next step in pushing the lie forward, right?
Ooh.
He's a leapfrog.
So does he talk about these people, like, because he's just a pleb who's part of the who's like slightly part of the system who helps them lie, right?
Essentially, yeah.
Do they talk about these people because they would know a lot more about the government's deceit than anybody else, right?
Yeah, because they make the lies.
Do they talk about these people disappearing more often than others?
Not necessarily, but Winston has known 30 people that have disappeared in his lifetime.
Shit.
Yeah. And a 31st actually disappears at some point during the book.
Whoa.
So it happens. It just happens. I would say anyone who's actually a member of... Well, because proles don't disappear. Because they have no power. No one cares about them. They have no ability to rise up, so no one polices them. They don't even really have rules for the proles.
It's kind of like when somebody... Like, the best thing to do is somebody who kind of, like, attacks you on, like, YouTube or whatever, or Twitter, is just not respond. Because as soon as you respond to it, you give them a little bit of credibility. You imply that this person has some sort of power in the situation.
Exactly. So the only people that would disappear would be party members. Mm-hmm. So in a way, yeah, the people who know the most are the ones who are the most likely to, set up against the party. And so, yeah, they disappear the most. But he doesn't really know what people do around him. The other people that work, like the guy who works across the hall from him, he doesn't even know what that guy does. Oh. Could be the same work, could be different work, could be whatever. So there's just a lot of not knowing, and that's the goal. That's how it's all laid out. So he's then changing a Big Brother speech, that one I told you about, that day order that needed to be redone.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure the Big Brother's speech... I'm not sure. No, maybe not. Because the lead article in the Times, the one on the head of their newspaper, is always written entirely in Newspeak. Oh. In that language that I was just reading from those little excerpts.
Newspeak.
Yeah. So the whole thing would be written with that condensed version of the words.
Yeah.
But so I don't think that's the case for the Big Brother speech. But what he did was... He took a speech where it was extolling the virtue of this guy.
Was that where you got that expression?
Extol?
Extolling my virtue? Because you said that one day on the Bros Play.
No, that wasn't in the book. I put that in the notes.
Oh, okay.
I like that word. So he's really making this one guy sound awesome, but that guy disappeared because apparently they did something he didn't like. So rather than try and make it any more complicated... or bring in, like, another person that may eventually become an unperson as well, he creates a completely fake person. So he creates Comrade Ogilvy.
Comrade Ogilvy.
Yeah, who is this... He creates, like, the story of his life and his death and what he did in the military and all these wonderful things. And the idea is that he's just playing up a fake character to make Big Brother's speech sound like it's patriotic.
Oh, okay.
And then... he points out that once he's filed that report, Comrade Ogilvy will exist in the exact same level of concrete information as Caesar or Charlemagne.
Oh, I see.
Or you or me, even. Well, not us, because we came after 1984.
Right.
But huge historical figures have the exact same credibility as existing as this guy who he just fabricated. Right? Because they all go into the same place.
Right, because no one's ever seen them. They're just taking someone's word.
Well, yeah, if someone just changed Caesar's name to Caecilius,
right,
no one would know any different. Ever. Everyone would... And also, the way their society works, people would have to conform to what was written there.
Right.
It's a property called doublethink, where you can both know and not know something at the same time. So doublethink is really actually an important part of this, because let's say there is something like that. Like tomorrow they say, we are now no longer the party, we are this. And we've always been this. We've never been the party. We've never been called the Party. Now we are the Falcons. You would have to forget that they used to be called the Party, and then forget the act of forgetting that they used to be called the Party. But then you'd have to forget doing that. So it's essentially a continuous process.
The other day, there was a story that I was telling somebody that happened 2 years ago, and I said that I said something. And as I was saying it, I'm like, I don't know if I said that or if it was someone else who said it.
You just know it was said.
I know it was said, but I don't know if it was me. I don't think it was. I think someone else said it.
In hindsight, yeah.
But I remembered it as though I said it. And it's like, and that's already
That's a
like,
weird one.
no one is changing that around.
You just have a shitty memory.
And exactly, because it wasn't important at the time. I wasn't like recalling it. Like when it was happening, I wasn't like, this is a moment I need to tell a story 2 years later.
Yeah, I need to remember who said this.
Exactly.
No one ever remembers that.
Yeah.
I think that the shakeability of the past, the unreliability of the past is what makes this story so creepy. Because there's nothing to base. He keeps talking about this feeling in his bones. Like he knows it's wrong, but he doesn't know what's wrong.
Right.
And that's it. He has no method of comparison. Right? He can't say,
Yeah.
you know, oh, well, it used to be so much better, because he doesn't even remember. Anything he remembers is these little fragments that are usually related to his mom. Oh, yeah. So then he goes to the canteen that I was telling you about, the dingy, gross canteen.
Yeah.
So that's where they serve gin there.
Nice.
Which you have to imagine, that's pretty cool. You get to drink on the job. And you get naps.
Is it good gin, though?
No, it's terrible gin.
Terrible gin?
It's oily and smells brutal. And when you drink it, it just hurts. Yeah, he hates it. But it's the only idea. It's the only thing you have. So they have pinkish stew, a hunk of bread, a cube of cheese, black coffee, victory coffee, not real coffee, and a fake sugar tablet that they call saccharine tablets.
Saccharine?
Or saccharide tablets.
Okay.
And so they're not real sugar, but they're kind of like sugar. It's a synthetic sugar. And all of this is served on a greasy tray. So you can imagine
a greasy tray.
Pinkish stew on a greasy tray with a hunk of bread, a cube of cheese, and a little saccharine tablet with some fake coffee.
So it's like gruel.
Just gross. The whole thing is just gross. So then he runs into this guy named Seam, which is a cool name. Yeah, it's like, well, I used to have a friend named Simon. We used to call him Seam sometimes.
Really?
Yeah, like, you know, Simon.
Simon?
Yeah, but you just shorten it to Seam, so Seam.
Was he from Quebec?
Halifax.
Ah.
Yeah, so, you know. He has to come through Quebec land to get here, so.
That's Nova Scotia.
Yeah. So the one thing he points out is that Seam is way too smart for his own good, and he's actually one of the people that ends up disappearing later on. So Seam is a guy who's involved with Newspeak. He writes Newspeak, like develops the language. So he's talking about, you know, how much he loves it and how they're making the new definitive edition, and he's talking about how they're shaving down the language, like trying to cut out as many words as they can. And this is just a description of how the whole double plus on good thing comes around.
Yeah.
So he says, a word contains the opposite in itself. Take good, for instance. If you have a word like good, what need is there for a word like bad? Ungood will do just as well. Better, because it's actually the exact opposite, rather than being a different word. Or again, if you want a stronger version of good, what sense is there in having words like excellent and splendid when plus good covers the meaning, and double plus good if you want something even more strong, right? So that's the whole idea behind Newspeak, is that they're shaving down the language to the point where you can express anything you want in like 12 or 15 different words.
The way that an emoji can explain something without words.
I almost liken it more to a programming language.
Oh.
Where you can have one piece, or you can have two pieces added together, or you can have three pieces. Like the language isn't written the way ours is, where each word conveys its own meaning. Each word has a base meaning that is then added by putting things onto it. So good is the base meaning, good, like a great thing.
Right.
And then the meaning that gets added onto that is either the opposite, plus, or double plus. So you're altering the base word rather than coming up with a new word like we do. For us, if I wanted to express that something was fantastic, I would use that word. But if they wanted to say something was fantastic, they would start with it being good and say, well, it's not just good.
Double plus good.
It's plus good. Well, I mean, that's not even enough. I mean, I think it's double plus good. It's just so bizarre,
It's like when a girl
nature.
texts you hey with like 5 Y's, and each Y represents how much more she likes you.
Pretty much, yeah. Especially if there's hearts after it. That's a pretty dead giveaway.
Or a little kissy emoji. A little...
The goal of Newspeak is to bring the language down to a point where it is actually impossible to commit thought crime because you don't even have the words to express how you would violate the party's desires.
So they take words out like conspiracy.
Yeah, that word wouldn't be in there. Because they don't need it. There are no conspiracies.
Like the invention of lying. I said something that wasn't.
Such a great line.
What do you mean? It was like there's no word for it, so how the fuck would you express yourself in that way?
Exactly. If you haven't invented it, no one can use it. And the idea is that eventually, I think by 2050, their goal was that people would actually converse in Newspeak. Because right now they converse in English. Just because, I mean, you can't talk.
So they're slowly trying to create a replacement language. So this is like a full-on thing. These guys, these whatever they're called, the top shit people in this society aren't doing this to, like, it's not just like, oh, we just need to stay on top. For them, it's like a full thing. Like, they're passionate about corralling human beings and constantly keeping them down.
But it is actually about staying on top.
Oh, okay.
The key is that by corralling them like that,
right,
it's the only way to stay on top. And they do talk a little more about why they use their methods and what their methods really amount to. But power is ultimately their goal. Power over people.
Okay.
That's the biggest thing for the party.
Yeah, sure. As long as you keep the power.
And that's the goal, to keep the power forever. So Winston even says, orthodoxy is unconsciousness. So the
orthodoxy.
Orthodoxy meaning like being with the party, being like following the party doctrine, is all predicated on you being in quote unquote unconscious, being like unknowing, unthinking. Yeah. But obviously still awake. So then Parson comes over while they're talking about this Newspeak stuff. Parsons is the fat father dude
with the spy children.
So he tells them this story. Really weird story. And for some reason he calls his kids nippers. I don't know if they're Japanese in descent or something, like, because it doesn't describe their mom. Their mom could be a Japanese woman and like his kids are Japanese and he's using it derogatory.
Do you know where that comes from?
Wasn't it because Japan is called Nippon?
Yeah. It's that simple.
What I don't know is if they're actually Japanese and he's being derogatory, or if that's just a term they use for, you know, little whippersnaps.
Well, it's also like there's a lot of different meanings for stuff, because weren't you saying he bought stuff with nips?
Well, he got a nip of a nip of gin.
A nip of gin.
Yeah, which I'm assuming is like a thimble of gin, but I don't really know.
But then some people say like the cold, like,
oh, it's nipping at me.
Or I was gonna say that. I was gonna say it hurts my nips.
Oh yeah, there's your nips. That's true. So he's talking about his daughter, and he says his daughter followed a man who had strange shoes. And so apparently she was like on a school trip, and then she follows this man with strange shoes for a while.
Did they light up when he walked?
I think they were just nice. Like, you know, people don't wear nice shoes. Oh. So they followed this man with these nice shoes, and then they reported that they like had followed a man with nice shoes to the cops, and then he was like arrested by the police. Oh. I guess, I don't know, for unorthodoxy, that's it. Yeah. And then I think Winston asks what happens, and then Parson makes the motion of aiming a rifle and then clicks, like for the sound of an explosion. And then, good, said Seam abstractly without looking up from his strip of paper. Of course we can't afford to take chances, agreed Winston dutifully. So they have this weird mentality where anything abnormal is wrong and bad, and it is that person's fault for being like
they had it coming.
Exactly. Yeah. So it doesn't even faze them that this dude just got hauled off by, and what? If my daughter just went and followed some strange man at a school trip, I would be pissed
you
at
just
my
gloss
daughter.
over that part. You're like, so what does his shoe look like?
Yeah.
It's like, sorry, what are you? Why was no one watching you? What's up with that?
Yeah. So they then, this is the best. They do an announcement on the telescreen, and they're announcing that the chocolate ration has been increased to 20 grams a week.
How much bigger is that than before?
Well, I remember I just told you a while ago that it was decreased from 30 to 20.
Oh,
They
so
then made an announcement saying it had been increased up to 20.
that's like when a game developer never updates their like news feed and their like new maps, and you're like, oh, cool, and then you go and check them out, and it's the same maps.
It's like anything E3 does to hype a game. Or EA, sorry.
It's the same
You knew
thing.
what I meant.
It's
Yeah,
either way.
Exactly what I meant.
Speaking of that, I have to show you something later today.
Oh, okay.
It's Devolver Digital's E3 press conference 2017. Fucking phenomenal.
Good or bad?
Phenomenally good.
Oh, okay.
Like beyond.
I was expecting not good.
Like every year, it's known as like the Snarkathon Fest. Like that's all the big YouTubers
Usually,
just sit there and watch E3 and then just snark about it. And they did it so many times that they make fun of how often they snark at it. But this year, Devolver Digital decided to make their own snarky version of it, and they're a developer. That's why it's so funny.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So check it out, ladies and gentlemen.
So you know how Hitler's Aryan race looked nothing like him?
Right.
The very same idea happens here. There's this idea the party puts out of party members being these wonderful, blonde-haired, beautiful individuals. But then he keeps describing the party members as being beetle-like men. Like they're all hunched over and short. And just like mean and... Yeah, exactly. Beetle-ish. And he just thinks it's funny how they don't look anything alike each other in that exact same way. And I think that even may be a commentary. Right? Because it's the same period of time. So he's probably drawing on that. But then he notices that girl who sat behind him in the 2-minute hate, that dark-haired girl, he notices she's watching him from another table.
Oh, no.
And so he catches her eyes, and she looks away, and he looks away. And he's starting to think, like, what's she doing? Is she... Like, she's probably going to turn me in, right? She's probably, like, investigating me. She probably thinks there's something wrong with me.
She's probably like that girl from the Truman Show. The one that wants to free him, right?
Yeah. There you go. But he's thinking more likely she's trying to turn him into the thought police. So then he starts talking about these really weird concepts that they have. He says she could be a member of the thought police, but it's actually more dangerous. Like the spies, the regular person spies are more dangerous than members of the thought police because they could be anywhere. They could be your loved ones, they could be your kids, they could just be a friend of yours, they could be anywhere. And he then starts talking about face crime, which is a term which is like if you look upset when you're alone, you could be taken in for that.
What the fuck?
Yeah, so you have to keep your physical features under control as well.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly.
That's too much.
Well, people are saying all this bullshit around you, too. And so, like, when there's a victory announcement, you have to look happy, right? It's like when Kim Jong-il died, and all these people were just wailing in the streets because if they didn't, they'd be shot.
Yeah.
Same idea. Exact same idea.
Wow.
So then Parsons is talking about his daughter again. His fucking daughter is a menace. So... There was a woman who was wrapping meat in Big Brother posters.
You're not allowed to do that, are you?
No. No. But
why was she doing that?
Well, if you have nothing to wrap meat, think about it. Like back in the day, fucking whatever you can find. Paper.
Right.
Just wrap it in paper. And so they set this woman's dress on fire and burned her terribly.
What the fuck?
And Parsons is telling this story like, not bad for a nipper of 7, eh?
Holy shit.
Yeah, because they live in this world where everything is distorted. Good is bad, but that's just not explicitly put.
But they're okay with this stuff because they believe
it's keeping them safe.
Well, as soon as you start, I've seen this 100 times with all the shitty bosses I've had. Like you start to see them. It's like once you like turn on the faucet or open the floodgates kind of thing. Like you start do one thing, you tell somebody to do something, not because it needs to be done, because you don't want to do it, and you do it once, and you feel that, and you just do it again, and then again, and it's easier, and then before you know it, you start to think, I, as the boss, should not do any physical work, because I am the one who manages those who do the physical work. And you forget what you were even supposed to be doing in the first place, and now you're bossing people for the sake of bossing people.
And then you become a rent-a-cop.
Well, the justification begins, and then it's hard to stop yourself from justifying it. It's like recently, I slowly slipped on the uploading of the show. It was like I was getting episodes out at like 12 instead of 10 a.m. and then eventually it was like midnight of the day, and sometimes the day after. And the other day, I joked about it with you on the phone, and you were like, "What else is new?" And it was all funny, and everybody thought it was hilarious. And later on, I was like, "That's not right.
It shouldn't. It should be new."
I've just been pushing it so much that now I'm totally comfortable with not even uploading on the right day.
You've adjusted to it. You've gotten used to it.
So did you notice this week?
It was all on time this week. It was a good week.
Dark Souls 5 through 9
came out all on
10 a.m. right day every fucking day.
Very nice.
You have to push yourself back into that. So if these people think that, oh well, if someone does something to break Brother, I mean, you gotta light them on fire.
Gotta light them on fire.
I mean, she knew she was gonna get lit on fire if she did that, and she did it anyway.
Probably.
I mean, she had it coming.
I mean,
what was she wearing?
Nothing. Oh God, let's not go there. So Winston actually talks about going to a prostitute a few years before, like a couple years.
Is it
earlier.
legal there?
No. So he knows that if he got caught with a prostitute, he could probably be put into 5 years forced labor. But it's one of those things where people kind of look the other way because sometimes, things gotta be done. And it's just not a good story. She doesn't really have all her teeth.
Ooh.
And she's like really old, so she's got like a lot of makeup on. It's not a pleasant story. And he tells it just with total disgust. But what he does say is that consorting with a prostitute is a lot less dangerous than consorting with a lady of the party. Because if you and a woman of the party were consorting like that, you would both probably be put to death. Yeah. So it's weird because it's only because no one cares what the proles do. It's the only reason that you can get away with that.
Right.
And he actually talks about when he used to be married. He was married to a woman named Catherine for about 15 months. That's a long time. It's over a year. It's a year and 3 months.
So it's a long time in their world, you mean?
I just mean to be married to a person... well, he hated her. I was about to say that, but so he calls her a human soundtrack of stupidity at one point, and he says he was never been around someone so grossly dumb, and she was just anything the party said, she just swallowed it up, and she always used to refer to trying to have kids as being their duty to the party, so it always became this like horrible thing, like once a week they would do their duty to the party, and it was just brutal, and it was not a good marriage, and he didn't like her. But then he tells this one story about where he's standing on the edge of a cliff with her, and they're like lost. They don't know where the rest of the group is, so he sees that he could just push her off and all the problems would go with her down the cliff, and no one would even find her.
There's
in the
a
middle
word
of nowhere.
for that. When you realize, like when you have a sudden realization of how far up you are, and you have the ability to just push somebody off the edge. There's like a whole expression for it.
Yeah, or even just the ability to jump.
Yeah,
like I know what you're talking about. I don't know what the word is though. And then he starts to think, very much because no one cares about the proles, he starts to think that they're the only solution. Like the solution lies in the proles because they have all the people, they have all the numbers.
Yeah.
But he sees this group of people. It's like 200 people, all proles, and they're all crowding around this one little stall, fighting over saucepans. Because if you need something and there's no supply. And so he could just hear the clamor of these 200 voices, and he's thinking, like, why don't they rise up? You look how much power 200 people can generate. But what he misses is that until the proles become conscious, they can't rebel. And until they rebel, they can't become conscious. So they're stuck. They're just really stuck in that loop.
Each individual doesn't want to do something because they don't want to be singled out.
And the individuals don't even recognize that they are part of a group. They don't recognize that the group is an organism of itself. They only see their own perspective, which you can't really blame them for.
No.
They don't have any access to information to tell them otherwise.
Yeah.
But it just proves that's why the party can stay in power theoretically forever, is because 85% of the population is proles.
Right.
And if none of them can rise up, then you have a much more controllable population. That last 15% is all you have to deal with. And then someone said, I forget who says it. I think it's the party that claims this, but they say that only the proles and the animals are truly free. Everyone else has responsibilities, but the proles and the animals are just sort of, they get to do whatever they want.
Yeah.
They have no, there's no thought crime for the proles, whereas there is for the party, and it's a big deal. And then he's reading a textbook. I don't remember who. I think it's like a kid's textbook, and it's talking about what came before. So this was kind of interesting. It's talking about the world of the capitalist. Yeah.
Oh, this is interesting.
Exactly. So this was what I thought was really neat, that he's kind of taking a look at things from a futurist lens. So this is a reading from a history textbook. In the old days, it ran, before the glorious revolution, London was not the beautiful city that we know today. It was a dark, dirty, miserable place where hardly anybody had enough to eat, and where hundreds and thousands of poor people had no boots on their feet and not even a roof to sleep under. Children no older than you are had to work 12 hours a day for cruel masters who flogged them with whips, and if they worked too slowly, fed them on nothing but stale bread and water. But in among this terrible poverty, there were a great few big, beautiful houses that were lived in by rich men who had as many as 30 servants to look after them. These rich men were called capitalists. They were fat, ugly men with wicked faces, like the one in the picture on the opposite page. You can see that he's dressed in a long black coat, which is called a frock coat, and a queer, shiny hat shaped like a stovepipe, which was called a top hat. This was the uniform of the capitalists, and no one else was allowed to wear it. The capitalists owned everything in the world, and everyone was their slave. They owned all the land, all the houses, all the factories, and all the money. If anyone disobeyed them, they could throw them in prison, or take away their job and starve them to death. When any ordinary person spoke to a capitalist, he had to cringe and bow, take off his cap, and address him as sir.
Wow.
Doesn't that actually sound pretty accurate?
Yeah.
If you go back to like the 1890s, that is exactly what it would have been like.
Even a bit into the 1900s, that was still
Probably.
very, very on point. Like the 1%, or the 1% of the 1%, has been a thing pretty much since humans have had wealth. There's always been that group on the top that has like more than everyone else combined.
That is really weird.
Yep.
And it's even weirder when you think about what the 1% really is nowadays.
Well,
if you make,
the 1% of the world, if you're making more than is it 30 grand or 40 grand?
$35,000 US a year.
US. Then you're part of the first 1% of the world.
1%.
But there's a 1% within that 1%.
Yes.
That has more than everyone else combined.
Yes.
And probably another 1% within that one that has the trillions.
Not necessarily. Once you get up to that level, you have to imagine that in that 1%
is the trillion and billions.
Exactly. Yeah. In that group. But just weird how he describes capitalism, and you think, oh yeah, that is both accurate and misleading at the same time. Because the reason everything was so gross back then was we didn't have technology. The reason everything is so gross in 1984 is by design. Right? There's not people profiting off of confusion the way it used to be. There's now people generating confusion for the purpose of power.
Yes.
So it's different. Capitalists wanted money and got power through that money, whereas the party wants power and nothing else.
And they imply that they aren't doing the things they describe. 'Cause they say things like, they could put you in prison for any reason.
And enslave people.
They owned everything. Like,
you had to call them sir.
Yeah, it's like, that's what you're doing, but you're pretending it's not.
Yeah, exactly. You know, they don't force children to work in factories, but they force everyone to work in squalor.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of neat that it is both true and untrue at the same time, like everything else in this book, right? And yeah, this is what I was telling you earlier. Where the only thing that tells you that this history book is wrong is the fact that every day feels wrong, right? You get up, you do all this weird shit, you go to a 2-minute hate. Like, none of these things are inherently normal to a person, right? So you get this built up feeling that you're not releasing like the things humans need to release: energy, stress, all kinds of stuff. So they have no guide. No one can actually show them, hey, you could be living better.
Right. Well, they don't have anything to compare it to. They have
no reference whatsoever. And they have these bullshit history textbooks that, well, I don't know, maybe they're not bullshit. Because it is in some ways better in 1984 than it was in 1890. Because in 1890, people died of dysentery all the time. Like,
yeah.
There are definitely some upgrades that have been made, but the thing is, they've given up their souls and they don't even realize it, like how much that means.
Well, the 30s in America was pretty brutal too. They called it the dirty 30s.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess because that was right after the Depression, right?
That was the Depression.
The whole 30s?
I don't know.
Because I know 1930, I'm pretty sure, was the height of it.
Okay.
I thought.
Maybe. Because it was like the booming 20s.
And I think like 29 or something like that.
Because it was a combination of, like, it was the end of the war, and it was all these men coming back who had been through so much bullshit that they were spending money constantly. And so it was booming, and certain industries were booming, but usually when you have a lopsided economic system, it flops.
It's a bubble.
Yeah.
You create a bubble and then it pops, and economic crises are so terrifying because imagine a plague that could descend on the world and affect everything without destroying anything physically. No one dies, nothing is ruined, but yet no one can work.
A biomass bomb.
Essentially what it is, right? It rips apart a community without having any effect on the actual infrastructure or the bodies of the people.
Yeah.
And even in Batman Begins, they talk about having used economics to try and crush Gotham.
Yes, they did.
It was their first attempt.
And then the Wayne family got in the way.
Exactly, because the Wayne family aren't capitalists. Dirty, grimy capitalists.
They're rich people who want to give back to others.
Which does exist.
Yeah.
Does exist.
Well, you got like people like Elon Musk. I don't know if he's necessarily donating, but he's the kind of guy that wants to build things for the people.
He's not really a philanthropist in the traditional sense, but he's a cultural philanthropist.
Right.
Bringing us cars and planes and boring ships. And yeah, he's a good dude. So Winston tells a story about something that he saw. He saw a picture of these 3 guys who were all confessors. They were all party prisoners. But he saw a picture of them that proves they weren't there the day they confessed to doing crimes.
Oh.
Which is the only concrete evidence he's ever held that the party was lying. But once he saw it, he knew he couldn't keep it, so he disposed of it, got rid of it. But it was just interesting because he knew that was the only shred of information he could, one day rely on to tell him that the reality is reality and that there is some lies involved in what he does.
So before this, it was only feelings.
Exactly. But that was actually a couple years before the story.
Oh.
That happened. So throughout the whole story, he knows he always has that feeling, but not his whole life.
Right.
Because obviously there's an awakening that has to happen. So he skips a community center night, which is just you go there, you play like bingo, and you basically, the idea is that you spend all your free time there so that you're not spending your own time like off alone. And it's even described as own life when you spend time alone. That's the newspeak word for it. And it's not a good thing.
Oh, you're not allowed to do that.
No, because what are you doing alone? Like, why don't you want people around you? Like, blah, blah, blah. And so this is when he's on a walk, and then he realizes that there's a rocket bomb coming because all the proles vanish like cockroaches. And yeah, he sees a severed hand, and he just kind of kicks it aside because what are you going to do with a severed hand? Right? The guy's not going to reattach it, and more likely the whole guy got blown up.
Yeah.
So he just walks on. And he walks on, and he finds a bar. And I guess at this point he doesn't even have a plan, but his goal is to try and ask someone about the capitalists. He wants to know what it used to be like. So he sees this bar, and he follows an 80-year-old man into the bar.
He would know.
Exactly, because he's been around twice as long as Winston has.
Yeah.
And he's talking to this old man, and the man really wants a pint, but they don't work in pints anymore. I think a pint is half a quart.
I don't know.
Not sure. But either way, they don't work in pints, they work in liters. So you can either buy a half liter or a liter. And the problem is a pint is somewhere in the middle. So he keeps asking for a pint, and they won't serve it to him. So finally Winston comes up to the bar, and he says, just give me 2 pints. Guy gives him 2 half liters. Whatever. And he's asking this guy questions, and he's saying, like, do you remember the capitalists? And he kind of remembers it. He remembers this one time, like, a guy shoved them out of the way. Like, a guy with a top hat shoved him out of the way. And then he asks him about the top hat. Like, did they used to wear top hats? And he says, it's been a long time since I've seen top hats. And he just has all these answers that are sort of anecdotal. They're basically fragments of a world that used to be.
Yeah.
Right. He's like, yeah, I remember. Yeah, there was top hats, but he could never give him a clear answer. He could never tell him, like, yes, there were capitalists. This is how they behaved. This is how they affected us. This is what the top hat is. So after a while, Winston realized
this guy
is wasting his time. Yeah, because the guy was so old. He's 80 years old. He probably hasn't had health care in forever. And he sort of analogizes it to like ants. They're so small that they can't see what it is that they've been through. Right? They can't see the overall picture, so they don't have any context to keep it all in their head.
Right.
Which is kind of shitty. But I think he knew that. He knew no one was going to remember. Like, the government didn't go to all that effort just so that one of the proles would remember what it used to be like.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, you adapt to what's going on right in front of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it only makes sense to.
Really good at it. It's why you see them in every single scenario, in every livable place on the planet. There's somebody there. Spreading out. Whether it's, like, ridiculously hot or ridiculously cold or whatever it is, someone's always there.
Yeah, other than rats, the only creature that goes everywhere.
Yeah. We're the only mammal more successful than rats.
Which is insane, because rats are pretty
They're on 5
sweet.
Of 7 continents.
Only 5?
Yeah. I don't think you find them on Arctic and Antarctic.
Arctic's not a continent.
Oh.
Antarctic is.
What's the other one?
I'm pretty sure it's North America, South America, Europe, Africa, Asia, Australia. I thought there were 7.
There's 7, yeah. North, South.
Yeah.
Isn't North, South.
Does Greenland and the Arctic count as one?
Well, the Arctic is one.
But the Arctic's just an ice sheet.
I'm pretty sure it's a continent, isn't it? Because that sounds familiar, that one of them isn't considered a continent.
Okay, maybe.
Maybe it's Antarctic.
Well, Antarctic is for sure a continent.
Then maybe it's the Arctic.
So that might be it. Okay. Either way.
But I remember what's his name? The fucking suave British man. What's his name? He's always on BBC. He's got the great voice.
You're not talking about David Tennant.
No, David Attenborough.
Oh, yeah, okay. David Attenborough.
Rats are the only other species
Mr. Documentary
that are on 5 continents.
That's funny. Okay. So now that Winston can't get this answer, he continues along his walk, and he actually ends up at the place where he bought the diary. He ends up at this little junk shop. And he goes in and he talks to Mr. Charrington. It's the name of the shop's curator.
Okay.
He's just an old prole. And he goes and he talks to him. And then he finds this paperweight. It's glass and it's got this little teeny gem inside of it. But because it's glass, it sort of distorts the size of the gem. And I think to Winston, it almost represents him. He's this one little unique thing trapped in this bubble. So he buys this thing. And Mr. Charrington starts to show him around the area. And he shows him this room up in the back. Like, he has a whole room that no one lives in. It's got a bed and a sink and all this other crap. Yeah. It's like for rent, but no one ever needs it. So I think Winston thinks about renting it at this point, but he doesn't. It's like too dangerous.
Right.
And Mr. Charrington mentions something. He talks about this rhyme. It's oranges and lemons go the bells of St. Clemens. And then there's like more to it after that. It's just this old London rhyme. I don't know why. I don't know where it comes from, but it's cool because it keeps coming up.
Like
pre-party.
Okay.
Like, this is like, all kids learn this as kids. When like some churches that are mentioned, like, so St. Clemens is a church.
Right.
Oranges and lemons say the bells of St. Clemens. St. Clemens, I think, is destroyed now.
Oh.
So this is like a really old thing. It's very historic. And I think it's like a kid's thing. It's oranges and clemens go the bells of St. Clemens. And then at the end it's here comes a lantern to light you to bed. Here comes a chopper to chop off your head. It's
what
like
the fuck?
It's a kid's rhyme.
Why?
I don't know. But
Why do kids have fucked up rhymes?
They always do.
The pocket full of posies.
Jack and Jill went up a hill to fetch a pail of water. Jack fell down and broke his crown.
Yeah.
And then Jill came tumbling after.
Yeah, they don't say what happened to Jill. Because, Jack busted his head open. Jack's dead.
Yeah.
Jack's fucked.
He's not dead necessarily, but yeah, he's fucked.
You crack your head open back in the time where you had to fetch a pail of water. You're probably also
so
not...
true. Just take a cloth and wrap it around. I'll be fine.
They just cut a hole in the bucket. You just wore the bucket.
I'm sure Jill probably landed on Jack.
Okay, so Jack's really fucked.
Yeah, so Jill's fine.
And Jack has internal bleeding.
So after he's talking to Mr. Charrington and he starts the rhyme. The rhyme, I think, is cool because it keeps appearing throughout the book.
Okay.
He slowly learns piece after piece after piece,
and it represents his understanding of this world.
I think it's just cool because it's a piece of historic London.
Oh, okay.
It's just this. It's unique. Most things don't survive, but this is actually something that survived by word of mouth. This expression. So he leaves. And he spots that same dark-haired girl, the one that was watching him in the canteen.
Yeah.
And she has no business being there because they work in the same place, and he has no business being there. So both of them are out of place. So he rushes off in the wrong direction because he doesn't want to have to walk past her. And so at this point, he's considering smashing her head in with that glass paperweight that he got.
Why?
Because if she's tracking him, right? If she's like looking into him, maybe that might be the best move. And then no one's ever going to question it. No one's going to investigate her death.
Right.
They'll just assume she was in the bad spot, got her head smashed in. And then so he's surprised at how, like, when the moment comes when she would, like, be in a position that he could cobble her to death, he just freezes. He just locks up, like someone in a fight. Like he gets the freeze, fight, flight, freeze.
Yeah.
And he's just surprised at how much he's like unable to act, even though it's in his own best interest to act. And then he starts to think about the thought police because he thinks she is one. And he's so confused because he doesn't understand why they beat and torture you before they kill you. Because he knows that they do that. But he doesn't understand what the point is. Why beat and torture someone if you're going to kill them?
Right.
And then that's actually how part one ends.
Oh.
Part one ends...
Just like him thinking?
Yeah, him thinking about being a prisoner of the thought police.
Oh.
Because he knows already that one day he's going to be a member... Or he's going to be a prisoner, sorry. He knows that. He feels like life is too long, right? You can't evade the thought police forever. So I think, yes, he knows eventually this is going to happen. And that girl sort of more put it into his mind, made it fresh in his mind.
Is this where thought police came from? Is this where the term came from?
I think so.
Yeah.
Pretty sure.
Huh.
This was written in 1945, and it's probably one of the most prolific and influential books that's ever been written.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've seen a single piece of work in the last month or two that hasn't had some sort of reference to 1984.
Yeah.
Right? Because it underpins all of society. It has so many of the major things that we either take for granted or don't think about enough.
Yeah, for sure.
But either way, that's where George Orwell leaves us with part one, is with him.
Is this a chapter-based book, or is it just 3 parts?
Just 3 parts, but
Really?
there's chapters within those parts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So he leaves you thinking, who is she? Where is Winston destined for? What will happen next?
Yeah.
And then after that, we'll be back with part 2.
Yeah, thank you for joining us for part 1. This is the first multi-part podcast we've ever done.
But I think that this is the way to do it. It's a big book. It's a lot to digest.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that everyone who has the opportunity should definitely try and give it a read. I think George Orwell is just a master.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you've read Animal Farm and liked it, you'll like this one. It'll
Yeah,
just take
he's
you a little
extraordinary.
longer to get through.
For sure.
So please come back and join us for the second and third parts of this series.
Mm-hmm.
We love you. And not in the way the Ministry of Love does.